On, my man?
How we doing? You
Doing
feeling
pretty.
that dog day grind yet?
Oh my God. I will say my energy level on day 3 was significantly lower than days 1 and 2. Like we said, day 1 has that first day of school vibe and
Yeah.
football, and it's exciting. But third straight day of
The
no pads
non-pads.
and
Yeah.
teaching day and going through the same exercises ish, kind of a continuation of red zone work from days 1 and 2, a little bit of special teams, some punting, punt return stuff. Not a lot again out there. You get to see some battle drills a little bit between receivers and cornerbacks. But for the most part, I mean, extremely, extremely light. You got one more of these tomorrow. We'll see what they cover. And then Monday it begins in earnest with some pads and this and that. But again, you know, can you overreact to some of the things you see on the field? Probably you can, but you shouldn't. But again, placement, who is where, who's doing what. There's a few of those things that I think are worth talking about. We're going to today on the Patriots Beat podcast talk about some of the stuff we've seen from the tight ends, return of the two tight end offense,
Yep.
what we envisioned to start last year. Could we be seeing a rebirth of it, or kind of a take two with Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith and what we expected out of them last year? More shuffling in the defensive backfield. Some definitely interesting things to talk about. Bill Belichick more and more and more involved in the offense as time goes on. So definitely stuff to talk about. But I guess let's start with like the highlight player of the day and somebody who is clearly a person of interest because of the massive contract he signed. He's their number one guy. They go out and they get him in free agency last year on day 1, Jonnu Smith, with this
Yep.
notion of what he's going to become in this offense, this jackknife, Swiss Army knife sort of guy who's going to get the ball in his hands in a million different places and do a bunch of different things. And maybe one of the biggest surprises to me last year was Jonnu Smith being as ineffective as he was. I didn't see it coming. I figure Bill Belichick goes and gets a guy like that. He knows exactly what he's going to do with them. And all year long, it was perfectly clear that they had no idea what to do with Jonnu Smith. So early, these days, and particularly on Friday, he was involved. He looked good. He made a couple really good contested catches, one kind of spinning back shoulder with Kyle Duggar in coverage. Looking good. Again, it's early, but this is the type of thing when you talk about how can this offense turn into something that people are going to be excited about. I think these two tight ends doing something close to what we thought they were going to do last year would be a huge, step in the right direction.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think when you talk about Jonnu Smith today specifically, it is very easy to say, well, let's pump the brakes, non-padded, blah, blah, blah. One of the big caveats we tend to throw on these things is, well, who's he going against? Well, Jonnu Smith beat Kyle Duggar twice. And especially the highlight catch of the day was it was Jonnu Smith. It was in sevens early on in red zone.
Yep.
Jonnu Smith's coming across the end line. And Mack, it was a beautiful ball from Mack, too. Another great chemistry throw. There's been a ton of those from him throughout camp. Just kind of puts it up and outside, leads him up. Jonnu Smith goes up over Kyle Duggar, over his head, comes back down, gets his feet in. I don't even think he got knocked out of bounds on the play. Maybe if there's pads on, he does. But, like, that was a real big boy catch over a good safety in Kyle Duggar. And I know I see the comment right there. I actually don't agree with that. I think Kyle Duggar's been good at the catch point. When he gets there, it's more of a timing thing.
He looks a little lost, actually, at times. It's not the catch point. He's looked like he's gotten lost in coverage a few times. But
so that's what I'm saying. Sometimes he's a little slow getting to the catch point. When he gets there, he's very good. The one today, I'll say
takes over there. But yeah,
right. The one today, I'll say it was non-padded. Maybe he really didn't want to go up and muscle him and all that. But what you were saying with like the two tight end offense and all of that, right? My first thought when they had, the getting rid of the fullback comments from Jakob Johnson, that was right where my mind went was, well, this is going to free up a lot of two tight end opportunities. And it may be traditional two tight ends, right? One guy on each side of the line or one guy in line, one line slot. The other thought I had was, and this leads to, we've heard since the spring, the Shanahanization of the offense, right? Maybe Jonnu Smith isn't a tight end. Maybe he's more that H-back.
Yeah, exactly.
Something like Kyle Juszczyk, because his best skill set to me, where he's at his best, and look, he makes some really athletic, acrobatic catches down the field. But I think where Jonnu Smith is at his best is you get him the ball in space. It can be at the line of scrimmage, but you get him the ball in space, and just let him create with the ball in his hands. We talked a lot about the third down backs yesterday, John, with Mike Giardi. It's that same kind of thing just from a tight end. And something I think is really interesting that could unlock him. You mentioned being surprised last year with his lack of production. If you go back and you watch the shows that me and the former host of this podcast did leading into that free agency, there was a lot of debate between Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry. Which tight end should they sign? And part of the reason I was high on Hunter Henry was under Josh McDaniels, especially those last couple of years, they had trouble just figuring out how to use scheme touch guys. I'll use N'Keal Harry's name. That wasn't the only issue with N'Keal Harry, but that was part of it. He was a scheme touch guy, and they struggled to figure out ways to get the ball in his hands. Cordero Patterson, I thought they did some, but they maybe scratched the surface of the player he really could have been in New England. Jonnu Smith is another scheme touch guy. So I'm not saying they got rid of Josh McDaniels to figure out Jonnu Smith. They didn't get rid of Josh McDaniels. He took a better job.
No, but start thinking he who must not be named. You know, you go back to Aaron Hernandez. I think that's the name that people threw out there with Jonnu.
And that wasn't McDaniels. Remember, that was Bill O'Brien. I just wonder if maybe a new mind, a new offense, something like that. I wonder if that's going to do a lot for Jonnu, because I think McDaniels just might have had some sort of mental block there.
So that's exactly right. And I heard a couple people talking about this today, and it's an interesting conversation to have. Belichick brought him in. He's the guy who gave him the money. He's the guy who targeted him early, right out of the gate, free agency. That's the guy I want. He gave him to McDaniels and said, look at this shiny new toy, make it work. And you're right. Whether it's a block or McDaniels had a different idea, whatever it was, it didn't work. Now with Bill Belichick as heavily involved in the offense as he is, you start to think, is he very much thinking about how am I now? Is he implementing whatever it was that he saw in Smith when he gave him that contract in free agency last year? How much it's going to kind of play itself out with whoever is ultimately calling the plays. We assume Matt Patricia is like, here's how you use Jonnu. Let me kind of set the template. I'll give you the blueprint, and then let's kind of roll from here.
Right. And I think Jonnu Smith's a really good player when he plays to his strengths. That's the case with a lot of players. There's very few guys who are just across the board good, right? I think Jonnu Smith is a player who's really good when he plays to his strengths, but under Josh McDaniels in the old Patriots offense, he didn't have a ton of opportunities to do that. As they rework this offense, like you said, they've made this investment in him. Now they happen to be reworking the offense well. You would think that part of that rework, a guy who's still here for 3 more years and is making a lot of money over the next 3 years, you'd think that that's a guy they would not, totally build it around, not make him the focal point, but make sure that his skill set is considered when they kind of put together this new thing they're putting together.
Yep. So Jonnu definitely there. Hunter Henry continues to kind of do Hunter Henry sort of things, which, and again, there's nothing wrong with it. I don't think you're getting explosive plays out of Henry, but what you got last year and some of the touchdown catches, and you're seeing that again. He's getting open, he's making the catches. So nice to see both tight ends kind of pop today. Other observations I wanted to talk about. We mentioned Duggar a little bit. I kind of dovetails into it. He hasn't looked awesome in coverage so far this year. And we've talked about in the first couple episodes here that making him up, he's more ideally suited as sort of a box safety here. Right. So I don't know what's going to happen there. What I do know is, and again, this is where the kind of defensive shuffling comes in, with a little bit of injury comes some sort of opportunity. You had Devin McCourty probably took a veteran rest day. He missed today. And in his place, Bledsoe kind of runs with the ones there. That's someone who we saw yesterday having terrific success defending the tight ends. You wonder kind of if some roles might shift here.
Sure. The one thing I'll say with Duggar, and feel free to call this a cop-out if you want, we can revisit it next week. He's such a physical player. If he's struggling like this with the pads on, I'll put more stock into it, right? I'll say, okay, maybe there's something going on here. Maybe he's hit some sort of wall. Until then, I just think he can't really play the way he wants to play right now. He can't play his game right now. So I'm maybe not as worried as some, but Joshua Bledsoe has looked good. He's a similar kind of player. So if Duggar doesn't turn around, I think when the pads come on, he'll be fine. But if this does continue to be an issue, he does have somebody pushing him. Another interesting thing, just while we're on this, you mentioned Devin McCourty kind of taking that Veterans Day. He was more of an observer today. Marcus Jones got some run at safety.
In the slot, too, in place of John Jones.
So he's gotten a ton of run in the slot. Today's the first time I really
but
saw
he
him.
was running with the ones, I thought, at the in the slot position.
Yeah, well, he has been, because Jonathan Jones and Miles Bryant are both out. Jonathan Jones on PUP, Miles Bryant's on NFI. But when they drafted Marcus Jones, or even before they drafted Marcus Jones, when we were talking about his potential fit, I brought him up as a guy who could maybe eventually be a deep safety for this team. And look, Devin McCourty, love him. He's still a great player, but he's not getting any younger. And they don't necessarily have an immediate heir apparent in that role on the roster. It's a very important role. And, when I brought up Marcus Jones, people talk about, well, he's too small. Is he not a good enough tackler for that spot? And those are fair concerns. But the fact he's getting looks there, I think he's looked excellent at slot corner through 3 days. He's probably been the best rookie so far. And it's early, but through 3 days of training camp, I think he was the best rookie. He's been great in the slot. I sort of expected that. I expect him to compete in the slot. Maybe not be this good, but compete.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Deep safety is very interesting to me, because I wonder if his long-term role is in the slot, or if they maybe see him as a guy who could not only contribute there, but maybe be a guy who at least helps fill that role when Devin McCourty moves on in a year or two.
Question here, I'll just throw it out there because we talk about it. The assumption here, John Jones, who'd been such a terrific slot corner when he was healthy, injured last year, still on the pup here. Can you move him around if you did find some other combinations here? I know he's ideally suited to play there, but could you see him playing outside if needed, especially on this team where you don't really have the traditional, kind of outside cornerbacks as as you're used to in the past?
I think he could if you really needed him to. My two concerns with that: one, size. If you're moving him to the outside, it's to guard bigger receivers. He's not the biggest guy. That's not his game. And that kind of leads into my second concern. He's so good in the slot. I just think you're shortchanging yourself to take him out of there. Like, I think even if Marcus Jones ends up kind of panning out here, he's still a rookie. There's still going to be some things he's learning. I think the drop off in the slot isn't worth it. I think at that point, if you're looking to kind of get creative that way, Shaun Wade is a traditional slot corner. They can move outside. They have moved outside at points in camp, and I think he's looked good. He had a pass breakup today in that role. I would even look at, maybe moving Miles Bryant outside first, because he is smaller like Jonathan Jones, but he's got a great compete level, and he played outside in college. He's not that far removed, right? So again, could he do it? Yes. I think you create more problems than the problem you're trying to solve if that's the route you go to find.
No, and I think if you're looking at help on the outside, it really depends whether he makes the team or not. But I think Butler, it was kind of your extra guy who you'd end up putting out there. Again, I know he's run with the scouts. He's run, you haven't seen him kind of out there. I watched him a little bit in battle drills. This is just my personal observation. He looks like similar to the type of guy that he was before. Plays more physical than his size would lead you believe. I saw him in one battle drill with Thornton, just absolutely worked. Just Thornton couldn't get anywhere on him. Same thing, using his hands, pushing off, tightly contested. I'm curious what we get out of Butler. What I will say is, through 3 days, and again, the caveat, no pads. The no pads should really benefit the offense. I'd say the most pleasantly surprising thing we've seen here is a defensive backfield and how some of these guys look here. And I think Jalen Mills has been awesome and looks like a number one corner. But if you're going to get a little geek, you're not going to get geeked up about Mac throwing touchdown passes in 7-on-7s with guys wearing, oven mitts on their hands. Like, that's hard to, because you're right. They're not physical there, but the fact that the defense has been competitive 2 days in a row, they certainly won the day yesterday. I'd call today a toss up, and the way that the D-backs have played and covered, I think that's the biggest, pleasant surprise of camp so far.
Yeah, you mentioned Jalen Mills. I mean, the only guy that's given him trouble has been Devontae Parker. And when I say he's given him trouble, I mean, it's some of these chemistry
box outs,
shoulder throws that, like, the corner, it's just executed at such a high level by him.
Catch of the day yesterday was good coverage, right? Great catch by Parker, great throw, terrific coverage by Mills. There's nothing you can do there. You just kind of I think there's really little room to say, if any, well, Jalen Mills could have done this better or that better through 3 days. Again, the pads caveat, of course, but if you talk about, like, who do they need to take the biggest growth this year from where they were last year? Mac's obviously number one on the list because he's the quarterback, so that's not really fair. But behind him, I would say it's either Jalen Mills or Jonnu Smith, depending on how you look at it. But if you argued that Jalen Mills, outside of quarterback, is the guy that needs to take the biggest leap, you're not going to get any disagreement from me. I think that that's a really solid argument. And very early on, the indication is that kind of leap may be coming. Yeah. And again, for the in Bill We Trust crowd, you let JC Jackson go. You don't go out there and sign or draft anybody. And it's like, what are we doing here? And then, sometimes they say we have faith with the guys we have in the room, similar with the linebacker position. And then they go out there and they don't. Or sometimes they go out there and it's like, oh, yeah, nope. Totally had it figured out. These guys can play. So far, early going, you definitely like what you see out of that group, particularly the guys who've been kind of, like we said, thrust in there just based off of opportunity, who have looked good both in Marcus Jones and Bledsoe. And we're not even talking about Jack Jones, who right now was kind of the preseason dark horse favorite to possibly supplant one of the incumbent starters entering camp as a starting cornerback on the outside there. So that group definitely looking better than we thought it would look. Other things we wanted to talk about, and Alex, you can direct me if you want to go there, but for stuff here, we talked about, other minor notes. David Andrews, Jake Bailey both returned. Nothing great there. You mentioned catch of the day.
Well, I'll say Bailey looked really good. He was a little down last year. He was dealing with injury.
I'm not going to let you do punter this early. It's still the 15-minute mark.
5.29 second hang time, John. He had one muffed as well. He was on today. He was.
I was going to give you your punter minute. I was going to give it to you a little later, but I wanted. No. It's fine. Couple things we wanted to focus on, and I think we'll cross promote a little bit here. I believe you had Doug Kyde on your podcast for 98.5. Is that correct?
Yep. Just put that up, 98.5thesportshub.com.
So you guys should check that out. Alex Barth's podcast over on 98.5. Also, all of his written material there as he's covering training camp for 98.5 Sports Hub at 98.5.com. So definitely check that stuff out. But the receiver picture, we're trying to guess day one. I think I put Alex on the spot. Tell me the three guys that you think are going to pop. And the reason I mentioned Doug Kyde is he has something on Trey Nixon, who I know is kind of a dark horse candidate and people have their eye on. But first, I want to focus on the three receivers here and who we think they would go there. And you have, the incumbents in Aguilar and Jacoby Myers and of course Kendrick Bourne. You're bringing in Devontae, and then you have the rookie in Tyquan, and then who knows, Trey Nixon is kind of battling a whole group of people there to possibly make the roster. You were guessing Myers was safe, in kind of if they were starting 2 wide, 3 wide. You've kind of changed your thinking a little bit after 3 days.
Yeah, I think that, there's a lot of time for things to change, but the early odd man out, and that's a term we're going to use a lot over the next month and a half when talking about the receivers. The odd man out early is Jacoby Myers. I mean, I don't know if him or Mac made the blunder today. Mac's first interception of camp, 7-on-7s. It was a simple, short concept. And I think what Mac was expecting Jacoby Myers to do, this was out of the slot. I think he was expecting him to run out, diagonally 5 yards and just sit down on that route, right? Turn around and get the ball. And it's an anticipation route. Jacoby instead gets it off his route, breaks toward the sideline. Mac hits Jalen Mills right in the number. I mean, it was so right to him that even though he's wearing those boxing training pads, he still caught the ball and made the interception. It's not, again, we don't know. We don't know what the call was. We don't know.
But I was watching Mac, and immediately he threw his arms up like, what are we doing here? So whether or not it was supposed to be that way, he was certain Myers was supposed to be somewhere else.
Right. We don't know who screwed up, but somebody screwed up. But the point is, it's like, you got Devontae Parker, who's making the catch of the day, pretty much every day through 3 days. You've got Kendrick Bourne, who clearly has some extra level of chemistry with Mac Jones. He's looked good. I think Nelson Aguilar's had an under the radar strong start to camp. I think if Parker's not doing what he's doing, we're talking a lot more about what Nelson Aguilar has done. And then you have Jacoby Myers, and this was really the first time he's popped one way or the other, was this interception today. And, for a guy in a contract year, the other 3 guys are all signed. It's kind of interesting that he's sort of falling back. And then Trey Nixon, talking to Doug, all the work he's put in this offseason, the way he's positioned himself, he's now getting more involved in special teams. He was helping on kickoff return yesterday. He was returning punts today, one of the 2 main punt returners, along with Marcus Jones. Jacoby's a slot guy. There's not a ton of versatility there. He's going to play in the slot. Trey Nixon's a slot guy as well, almost a pure slot guy. So I'm not saying that Trey Nixon has supplanted Jacoby Myers, the Patriots slot receiver, through 3 days. But there is a little pressure now on Jacoby, and he hasn't necessarily hit the level that those other 3 guys have hit through 3 days.
Again, you're talking floor versus ceiling, and Jacoby's been
Right.
a very high floor guy, and a very dependable receiver when other people who the Patriots might have been expecting more from faltered over the past couple of years, whether it be Aguilar, N'Keal Harry, or whomever, what have you. So Myers stepped up, great. I think everyone loves the Jacoby Myers story. I think he's certainly been dependable, but again, you're really looking at ceiling versus floor. And a guy like Nixon, and again, I know you mentioned you spoke to Kide about, it's the speed. The speed is what's enticing there. And this is a guy who, according to Doug in his article here, spent the entire offseason working out with Gabriel, now Gabe Davis, with the Buffalo Bills, who's expected to have a monster breakout season, there in that, super dynamic offense as the number 2 behind Stephon Diggs. But, just a lot of things about working out, studying Edelman, studying those guys and working that. And that's something that, the Patriots lack. You can actually really see it in these red zone drills. You have 2 tight ends who are not traditional red zone type of go up and get it tight ends. You talk about why they struggle. You haven't really had a receiver who's been able to do, things in the red zone. You're seeing more of it from Parker. And you haven't really had that guy who runs those awesome Edelman Amendola pivot routes to be able to get open right there at the goal line. And Nixon seems to have the physical, and Jacoby's not that guy. He's just not quick enough. He's a solid possession receiver. He's not a yak guy. And again, if you're talking about a team that doesn't push the ball downfield that much, you got to get it in people's hands and have them do stuff. So again, a person like Nixon with his profile, if he were able to put it together, would be someone that would make sense here. Can he? I don't know. But I think, nothing personal against Jacoby, but I think everyone, based off of what Nixon can do with his speed, they'd like to see him emerge.
Yeah, and I think it's something that, going back to Mac at Alabama, and people who watch the show have heard me pound the table for this for months now, the speed slot, right? A guy who can run some of those Edelman routes like you talked about. And in talking to Doug, he said watching Trey Nixon, he seems like the smoothest route runner on the team, but can also give you some slot fades, some slot goes, some slot posts. We saw him make an incredible catch back in the spring in minicamp, 35, 40 yards down the field on a slot post, beating, I think it was Jonathan Jones. They can just do some different things, right? Again, like you said with Jacoby, he's going to go out 7 yards, find the hole in the zone, sit down and make the catch.
Yeah.
And that's, look, there's a ton of value in having that guy in the right offense. When you had Tom Brady, there was a ton of value in that guy. The way this offense is structured, especially if they're going to do more of the Shanahan stuff, you need a guy who's going to give you something a little bit more after the catch, and that's Nixon. Again, I wouldn't say he's supplanted Myers yet. Myers is still a very good receiver. He's I think 800-yard, 900-yard receiver last year, and there's still certainly a role for him on this team, but it's just, again, we the odd man out, right? They have 4 wide receivers or 5 receiver locks. Really only 3 can play a lot. Really only 2 can be starters. 2 or 3 can be starters. So there's going to be 1 or 2 guys who are the odd man out. And right now, it just feels like Jacoby Myers is a step behind Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, and Nelson Aguilar.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't doubt that. And as you said, Aguilar's been a little sneaky. You're not seeing a ton because everybody's talking about the new guy. Parker's kind of stolen all the headlines. And then, of course, you've got Thornton with a ton of eyes on him, this year. And again, we speculated this earlier, a Foxborough flu situation where Thornton could theoretically, if they deem that he's not ready, could get some sort of medical red shirt this year, thus opening up an extra role where you have Myers and Nixon potentially on this team. And then you kind of see what happens. I wouldn't be stunned if that happened. I really wouldn't. Again, we'll see how Tyquan progresses. But again, given the fact that I think they do want him to put a little meat on his bones, take another year or so and maybe kind of figure stuff out, that wouldn't be too shocking to me.
Well, Thornton's looked good to this point. He looks really smooth when he moves.
He does.
It's funny. I heard Doug say that about Nixon. I actually felt that way about Tyquan Thornton, not just the straight line speed, the way he gets in and out of his breaks and changes direction, but he's really one of those, towards, I have a list right here. I'm going to be writing for 98.5thesportshub.com tomorrow. Who are the players to watch the most, who have the most at stake when the pads come on? Tyquan Thornton's on that list, because then you really get into the lack of size, the lack of muscle. How can he compete? So it's going to be really interesting to see, if he continues to pop when the pads come on, it changes this whole picture. I think right now we're all working on at least somewhat of an assumption of somewhat of a redshirt year. If he comes out and he's dominating coverage when the pads are on, buckle up because things get very different. Now all of a sudden he's a potential top 2 guy.
Yeah, different story today. He talked today. He sounds pretty, he sounded pretty confident. And again, so much of it with him,
he gets it.
He gets it. I like kind of his I like his makeup, so far, and I like what I've seen from him. But you're right, no player. On the offensive side, we will learn more about Thornton when the pads come on than almost any other player on the team, because it's really going to come down to, can he get off the line? Really, is what it's going to come down to, or is he just going to get absolutely manhandled by corners? And again, I won't say the Patriots don't have physical corners. They do have some physical corners. They're just not the biggest guys. And if he's getting his butt kicked going off the line against, your Millses and your Jones and guys who are 6 feet and under, it might be a bit of an uphill climb for him this year.
People will laugh at me for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's one corner on the team. He's not going to track Tyquan Thornton down the field. The one thing he does very well, he's a big guy. He can get in a receiver's jersey at the line, and that's Juwan Williams. Again, if Tyquan gets off the line, that's pretty much it for Juwan Williams. But that's a head-to-head I'd like to see, because like you said, the Patriots, they don't have a ton of these big press guys. They usually do. So in my mind, I go to, all right, well, who's the biggest press corner? Who's the strongest press corner he's going to face? It's Juwan Williams, maybe by default, but it is. So that'll be an interesting matchup to watch.
And Juwan Williams is just one notch above me on the depth chart right now. So I don't know exactly what we're going to see from him.
Maybe that says more about the corners than anything else. But just like when you said that, my mind instantly went to, because it's a good point, right? We got to see him get off against some press. Yeah. So my mind goes to, all right, who's the biggest guy he's going to have to shuck off of him? Unless, Jabril Peppers comes back and plays some outside corner, which he might. By default, it's Juwan Williams. He's the biggest guy, right?
Yeah. I mean, and you're right. And that's the kind of like, go out there and beat the crap out of him, because I want to see what the kid can do.
Right. Exactly.
And it's almost kind of like, right. It's he is the prototype in terms of that, and that type of thing. Is that, can you beat a guy with his size and his physicality? That would be interesting to see. Couple quick hits, just want to whip around here, and we're not going to linger too long today, because as we said, third straight day without a ton of stuff going on. We did mention Bill Belichick was calling the plays again in the 11 on 11s. That's interesting to see. Again,
Joe Judge got a session too.
Yeah, and Joe Judge, and again, Joe Judge was in there a little bit yesterday, so it's still a bit of a rotation, but it's clearly an all-hands-on-deck sort of situation right now in the early going, though we still clearly believe that Patricia is most likely going to be the guy when it all comes down to it. But Belichick is insanely involved. Again, you've got receivers talking about him again today, that they love having him there. Like, this is awesome. Right. Like, we love this attention for Bill. We never get it. He's always with the other guys, and we'd be with Josh, and Bill didn't even know our names, and now he's in there, he's in the huddle, and he's talking to us, and we're getting the love. I do think they appreciate that. Again, there's nothing, not just appreciate it, nothing but good things can come of Bill Belichick being more involved in one facet of a game. Right. It's a good thing to see in the early going. Other quick hitters I wanted to mention, you said catch of the day was John New. I am going to give it, I might go throw of the day. Bailey Zappi to Ty Montgomery.
That was a nice throw.
Was beautiful.
And that was a bounce back throw too.
Yeah. And Zappi, who's been inaccurate and a little bit loose, a little bit wild with it in the early going, that was great. What is interesting, and again, we're not really sure why it is, but Brian Hoyer, who was there but didn't play yesterday, just wasn't there at all today. We don't really have anything going on there, so I don't want to speculate, but just something to kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah, I just kind of assumed Veterans Day off for him, right?
Maybe
it's been every time.
It's the 2 straight days. That's why I was curious.
That's true.
He was around and then not around at all today. No, we didn't see him.
I just feel like every time Zappi throws, everybody up on that hill is looking at me, because people know I love Bailey Zappi. I love Bailey Zappi since October. Yeah. He's been hit and miss. I mean, I think he's really trying to, the knock on him, it was similar to Mac. Does he have that extra oomph on his arm to get the throws in there? And I thought last year Mac kind of played that tentatively. Bailey Zappi's kind of attacked it the opposite way.
I think he's
really
slinging
seeing what he can get away. He's really seeing what he can get away with. And to mix results, like you said, the throw to Ty Montgomery, that was a needle. He had another one to Devin Asiasi. He threaded through 2 linebackers. It was a beautiful throw, and it came right after an interception too on a similar play. So showing a short memory and an ability to bounce back. But Yeah, he's been interesting to watch. It's not quite what I expected. I thought he was going to be more timid. I thought he was going to be more of a check down guy, but he's really come out and pushed it. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just kind of been surprising.
Yeah, but again, that throw, beautiful kind of back pylon fade over Sean Wade there. Really good throw, really good catch. Montgomery's a guy who I do think is interesting. I continue to keep an eye on there, working mainly with the backs, but I mean, still listed as a receiver. An interesting guy here. And again, we have to see how things shake out with some of the other guys on the roster. I just keep keeping an eye on Stevenson, and I'm really just kind of really taken by just how much quicker and agile he looks, and you can just see him continue to work into the passing game there. Other thing you mentioned before I give you your little punters minute, more fun from Bill today. And again, the fans here who aren't there and you want to know observations, that's kind of it. Like things we always talk about with Bill, because it is interesting, is what's he doing? And hold on one second. What's he doing? What's he what's the type of mood right now? The mood has been really complimentary of a bunch of different players, kind of lighter, here, lighter practices. And you got the little fun kind of moments here where the punt drills and, people trying to catch him and blah, blah, blah. And that was, those are always fun to see.
Yeah, so what the drill was, and this is a college thing. I've never seen the Patriots do it. So at the end of practice, they all lined up, like they formed a tunnel across the fields, offense on one side, defense on the other. Jake Bailey was punting to Trey Nixon and Marcus Jones, and it feels like those are probably the two leaders for the punt return job right now. At least, I would put Jabril Peppers in there too, but he's obviously on PUP. And so what it is you catch the first punt, and then you go again, but you still have the ball from the first punt. So then, you get two, and then what do you do? And it was, how many do you get up to? I've seen videos of college players getting up to 7. They both got up to 5, but Marcus Jones started putting the ball under his jersey. I don't think that counts. I think you're supposed to hold it.
No, you can't tuck it. You got to hold it.
You can hold it, but you can't put it in your jersey. Like,
you can't do that, right? You can't tuck it away. No,
I've seen guys put it between their legs and kind of like waddle around to field it. But they both got to 5, and then they had Cole Strange go against DeMarcus Mitchell. I don't know. Did you see the second one that Cole Strange caught?
No.
It was actually like wildly athletic. So again, he's already holding one football, and this was Jake Julian for that second round, and he put it like into the crowd where the offensive linemen were standing. So Strange he had to run like 30 yards. He had to maneuver around all these players and find his way without bumping into anybody. And then again, he had to catch it one-handed, and he did it. He fell down, but he did it. It was actually, he's a great athlete. Say what you will about Cole Strange, really good athlete. So that was cool to see. That was fun. The offense won the session, so I don't know, they might get a night off or something. But that was a fun. It was a college-like sort of thing to see them do that.
Yeah, and that's good. Again, in these early days when you're again not really trying to grind and not with and the pads aren't on here. Good to see that. But Bill's been happy, Bill, these few days. You haven't gotten surly Bill really in any of the press conferences, and just the way that he's gone about it so far. It's always fun to see that. Alex, leftover thoughts here before we get to your Jake Bailey stuff.
So market, like kind of from that take, I think Trey Nixon as the punt returner, as a potential punt returner, is interesting. I go back to what I talked about yesterday at the end of the show, right? With him and Lil Jordan Humphrey playing some on kickoff coverage and as upmen on returns. He needs to play special teams to make the roster. And we just kind of gushed about how he might push Jacoby Myers. It's not going to happen if he's not contributing in the kicking game. So if he can be the punt returner, I mean, that's obviously a huge boost. So that stood out to me. I think that was pretty much it. I think we pretty much cover everything I had in my notes today.
Yeah. So I know we got another practice before it, but quick preview on, first of all, Jake Bailey was back. Jake Bailey, obviously Alex is a big punter guy, and Jake Bailey is one of his guys, his binky. Jake needs a bounce back year, Alex.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And he's in a contract year.
He's in a contract year
for some reason.
And this was the best punter on the planet 2 years ago. And, something happened. So
I don't know if he hits week 1 in a contract year. They open up $4 million if they extend him. I don't know why they haven't done it. He was hurt.
It's expensive for a punter. What you're going to pay
the second highest paid punter in football. No, sure. He was hurt part of the year last year. He looked really good in the spring. He's looked really good now. I mean, he had that one kick, and I had him clocked over 5 on 2 of his punts, and then a third at 4.99. he had because the thing I love about Jake Bailey, I've loved since the draft, it's not just that he can kick the ball high, he can kick the ball far. The axis the ball spins on is so freaking weird. And that's why Bill always liked left-footed punters. It's a reverse axis. The returner's not used to it. Higher chance he muffs it. Bailey's not a lefty, but he puts a unique spin on the ball. There was one that was just Tim Wakefield would have been impressed by this one. And Marcus Jones muffed it. All-American returner in college muffed it, had to take a lap. Jake Bailey seems like he's picking up where he left off in 2020, and last year might have just been an injury thing. So it was really good to see that. He's been excellent. So I think he can get back to form, and he should extend him.
Yeah, the seeing Marcus Jones muff a punt gave me Cy Jones vibes, and I don't want to see that kind of thing. Also,
I think in a game, Marcus Jones lets that punt go. I don't like. He had trouble just getting to that ball.
Yeah. Yeah, I do want to point out that Alex Barth is the only Patriots reporter down there with binoculars, a tripod, and a stopwatch. A true triple threat when he covers Patriots practice. He's got it all right. There's nothing that Alex is.
It's what CLNS taught me. They made me a complete reporter. I appreciate it.
Right, all the tools. He's got all the tools. He can literally do it all. So again, like I said, we are going to wrap it up, but we're going to keep going with this stuff. They are back Saturday. We'll see what kind of day that we have there, and then Monday gets super interesting. We will have a couple new characters on this podcast starting Monday as well when they do put the pads on. So. Things you're most interested in seeing when the pads do go on. For me, I mentioned Thornton. I'm going to start with the rookies. I mentioned Thornton, and you want to see Strange for sure, because we're looking at him out there. And again, I know we're a day early on our preview because they still have another practice before that, but I'm really eager to see Strange and his physicality. You mentioned his athleticism with catching punts and this, that. He's a good athlete. Everything about him profiles as an exceptional overall athlete. Does he have the size? Does he have the tenacity, the ferocity to be able to hold up there? It's a big question mark. So you really do want to see him bang heads with people on the other side. What are you looking at?
Yeah, so those two staying on the offensive line, Isaiah Wynn, how comfortable does he look at right tackle, new position? I think that's a key spot. You mentioned Tyquan Thornton, the receiver, Devontae Parker. He's made all these, really eye-catching, contested contact catch looks. Can he still do that when the defensive backs can knock him around a little more? And then the linebackers, right? We've got this big linebacker battle.
You can't get anything out of linebackers in these drills. Nothing.
Right. So once the pads, right. So, that was, might have been the position battle I was anticipating the most with Raekwon McMillan, Cameron McGrone, Mac Wilson. I think there's a ton of upside there, really exciting players. And we learned a little bit about Raekwon in terms of his usage, but those guys really get it going on Monday. So those are the three groups I'm really looking forward to watching with the pads.
Yeah, that should be fun. Again, as far as our coverage goes, you can make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you're going to find all sorts of recaps, podcasts, clips down from Gillette Stadium, interviews, and our practice videos and all sorts of things. So just going to be nonstop coverage, kind of hitting that YouTube channel. Subscribe, turn on your notifications. You'll be notified when we go live during the preseason, during the season. It's quite a lot between the Patriots Beat podcast, post-game shows, Greg Bedard's podcast. So there's a lot on this channel that you want to make sure that you keep up on. The best way to do that is subscribe. You can also follow us, Patriots CLNS, on Twitter. I mentioned Alex, again, all his good stuff over at 98.5 The Sports Hub, both written and his video stand-ups that he's doing from the field out there. And of course, his podcast, which was just released with Doug Kyde, formerly one of the Pats beat reporters over at PFF right now. So make sure you tune into that. Follow Alex Barth here on Twitter as well, at Real Alex Barth. That's it. We're going to wrap it. Like I said, kind of a shorty, but another day tomorrow and then full pads Monday. So keep it here. We'll keep you updated with daily podcasts on the Patriots Beat. Take care.